Well, good morning. We're back here again, the four consulting amigos. It looks like John is sunk down into the ocean there just a little bit. Move your camera up a little, John. And because we
Oh,
want
there we go.
him
I'm breathing better now.
we want him to participate. And so he looked like he was going to drown. I'm not sure I could have gotten very much further if you were drowning there. So today, what we thought we'd do is talk a little bit about innovation, and we're not talking, everybody knows some of the big innovations and the kinds of dynamics that have gone on in our particular country that have created an amazing amount of wealth for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people who've invested in the right companies at the right time. And we all know who those companies are. And, we've called them the dot-commers and then the ITs and now the AIs. And so we know kind of who those really big people were. And they came up with some great ideas when the market was exploding and a lot of high-tech inventions. But small businesses really can't play in that, or they can not very easily play in that particular arena. It is true that you can come up with something pretty amazing and dynamic and create a new industry. And that does happen. All these businesses were small. Um, even Apple started with two guys. So, they can start small, but they really bring a lot of expertise in the front, probably a lot of luck and a lot of insight in what kind of a market may or may develop. And in this case, they just happen to. What we wanted to focus on is really, well, how do you structure innovation? How do you structure the improvement of your products and services? How do you actually create a methodical way to go about that? And what I thought I'd do is use a tool that I have come up with and used for a long time. The, a value diamond, which basically illustrates the reasons a customer uh, determines the value of their service to you. And we basically, uh, believe that customers make a decision based on their perception of value. And so what we wanted, the question is, well, what is value? And people always get that wrong. If you just say, tell me what value is, we all have a different definition. Well, I basically, as I studied this, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, basically came up with these four elements: quality, service, price, and image. And the notion here is that, as you gentlemen know, but for those in the audience, the notion here is that along these axes, you can measure how much service, how your service compares to others: image, price, and quality. And if you do that, you can kind of come up with a comparison so that you can determine how you are compared with, say, a competitor. In this particular case, you might have somebody who really scores high in all of them, but maybe here's a competitor whose image is really low. So if the price is also low, the question here is the price low enough in order to overcome the fact that they might be considered a shoddy company, even though their quality is rated as among the highest or the best. So, this composition and how they change across companies and comparisons and products really is the determinant of why people make the decision to buy. So then the question is, well, how does that apply to changing your product so that you can get you can get a low price. You can have, and in this is low price here, whereas this is high image, high service, and high quality on the top. And so if you can get out on this red one, the chances are you're going to win. And in most of the cases where I've done this with companies and had them do it against their competitors, we found that the chart itself was very, very close to the reality, how well they were doing, how long their customers stayed, et cetera. So that's the basic concept. But now the question is, if you're trying to incrementally change your innovate slowly, how do you go about that? And so I wanted to talk about some of the things you can do. It's very easy to say, well, improve your quality. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll just improve my quality. Well, that's not that's not easy. Ed's smiling. He knows that it's hard. It can be really, really hard. And yeah, you can lower your price, but you might be losing money. We all understand what a high or low price is based on the perception of the value, the other components. And then, of course, you can work on your service and try and make your service better. And boy, there's a big difference in service between certain companies. Some companies are really working hard to provide excellent service. Some companies are not doing very well. AT&T, Verizon, et cetera, are notoriously poor service, as many of those big conglomerates have been. Some of them have come along and done a pretty good job on service and then end up beating the competitors. But the product is perceived as pretty much the same thing, and it ends up boiling down to price. Most of our small businesses have many different components. It's not just the same product and what is the price. It really has to do with whether or not there's trust, if there's authenticity. These are image and brand issues, as well as if the service is really pretty good and, of course, the quality is good. So if we take a look at some of the components of the components, it gives us a little bit better look. So if we take a look at quality, the quality is generally, these are not all of the components of quality, but generally durability, reliability, fit and finish, do the parts come together well? Do they look like they're made for each other? Is the paint right, etc. The engineering, of course, performance, and say longevity. Those are all pieces of quality. So if it was determined that your quality wasn't quite as good as, say, your competitor, these are the areas you want to look at. How can you increase durability, reliability, and create a kind of a new paradigm for the way people think about your business? Um, can you engineer something better, not only to increase the longevity and performance, or maybe its ease of repair, which is a very much a sustainable subject today. And that is, how easy is it to repair? And do I have to have a guy that charges me $250 to come out and take a look at it? Or can I just do this myself? If you're talking about your refrigerator or home appliances, or even a factory press or something like that. You know, can you actually just pull a component and put a new component in there? Somebody who's got a little bit of education about how to do that. Those are kinds of things that could be done that would make your long-term quality a little bit better. Then if we go to service, that is obvious. It's not only customer service, and we tend to think of it as customer service, but it also includes the delivery of the product. We all know that Amazon has beat the pants off of all of its competitors by increasing service of delivery, or just how long does it take to get that to your house? And they've been quite responsive. I'm afraid I have to say I buy 90% of the stuff that I buy from Amazon. And I'm consistently amazed at how they have shortened it. When they started, their fast delivery was 2 days. Then it was next day. Today, I would say that when I'm buying something for the house, nuts and bolts and yard stuff and a lot more than that. But I mean, they have a whole group of things that you can get the same day. And you'll see a delivery window of hours. Well, you order at 8 in the morning, they'll get it there between 10 and 4. Or you can have it come between 5 and 9. And I've had deliveries at 12 o'clock at night. So they are willing to do whatever it takes to be able to get that delivery down. I don't know if they can do much better than that, but that is a major piece of their business, is service delivery. And then, of course, part of customer service is error handling. One of the biggest problems is people who make mistakes don't do a very good job. Amazon, sorry to use them as an example for so many of these things, but they're pretty good. Amazon just says send it back. We don't even want to have to deal with what the issue might be. we will simply take it back. Now, that's built into the money side of things. They know much they can take back. They know what the error factors are. They have incredible information, development and analysis, so they can do that. Not everybody can, but that's the way they handle it, and it works really well. Support is another area, and that might be more on a technical basis. Um, Courteousness, of course, that's part of customer service. And then we get into image. Now, image is something that many people say, "Oh, that's not really value." But no, I can attest to you that the image is very, very important. Otherwise, how can you explain that Absolute vodka beat Smirnoff, the known winners of vodka for 40 or 50 years, and Absolute, vodka's vodka for the most part, despite the fact that they try and differentiate it, but they literally beat them on the design of the bottle. And that's how they did it. And now Absolute is the clear leader in the vodka market. So yes, aesthetics have a lot to do with it. That was in terms of the product. But the brand or the image, how do you explain Ralph Lauren's success over many, many, many other competitors? It's because people have an expectation of the quality. They know who it is, they know what it is, certain amount of prestige involved, people like that, based on what the rest of the value components are. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of the brand which actually drives the overall value perception, or at least it is a major part of it. It goes to what your vehicles look like, decor of your office or your waiting room, the advertising and whether or not that makes any sense for what people think you are, and of course promotion, etc. So image and brand, you can do a lot with image and brand without having to re-engineer the product. And it's amazing how that can help. And since I spent most of my time in terms of building business growth, most of my time in the broad area we would call marketing, I can tell you for certain that there were many times when all we did uh, was tweak the brand, support the brand, and communicate, and business went up because the perception of the price went up, and therefore they ended up getting the business. And so, in technical things where, say, reliability is a big deal, the question is, do they think it's going to be reliable? Or if a machine works over many, many years and you don't have statistics, you're a manager in a particular factory may not know that it's reliable because it hasn't broken down yet, or it's been in perfect service for 20 years and it broke down while that manager was there. They don't know that unless they have a very reliable perception of the brand, and then they might go back and buy it again. Very, very key piece. And it's very inexpensive to actually change that. In the case of two or three clients where they would come in and say, nope, we're not going to lower our price. We're just not going to do it. We can't afford to do that. Now, we've had a lot of discussions in our consulting amigos forum here about price and margin and the numbers. And of course, we support all of those things that we've discussed there. But when you have a client that says, sorry, not going to change the price, can't make money any other way, say with more volume, and then the question then is, well, okay, that's the tools I have. Then you have to work on image. Image can increase the support of price. Very, very key. That's why Gucci can get two or three or four or $5,000 for a leather handbag that has about 20 or $30 worth of material in it. Okay. So there's no question that this is a big deal. Now, it's not that easy to do if you're not talented in that area, and you might need some help, but it can make a big difference. Now, price, we all know it is either higher or lower. And so the question then is, well, do you have to support a higher price, as I just mentioned, or can you lower price? Um, there are a couple things to do there. This gets into a lot of Ed's bailiwick, and that is, well, you can alter the price by increasing your operational efficiency, by increasing the operational volume buying on the front end, bringing in products that have better pricing by through volume or new resources, etc. Also, also you can increase the price by having a better design so that it doesn't take as much to build the product. And that can be a variety of things depending on your industry. And then, of course, just overall increased productivity. And many of these things has been involved in for decades, and that's the whole idea in a manufacturing facility as well. How do you really communicate all these things? And with the end goal to increase efficiency, build a better product, which creates more margin and which also helps you pay the people who participate. So those are some of the ideas, guys. And I thought I'd just open this up and kind of quickly have a discussion about this whole general idea of, well, okay, well, how do you really manage the overall process of just simply trying to make your business better? Um, Ray introduced me to continuous improvement, I don't know, 20 years ago, some long time ago. And that's what we're talking about. We tend to think of that in terms of manufacturing, squeezing money out of the manufacturing process. But that can really happen in other things too. And Ed's been very good at looking at some of those issues of, well, how can we better manage the office so that our collectibles come in faster, so that we don't need quite as many people in the accounting staff, those kinds of things too. Very few CPAs even talk in that language. They basically just compile numbers. Ed has been a COO, and so, he's got a different twist. So let me throw this open. What are your general concepts, ideas, or thoughts about my concept there? John, start us off.
Okay, I was waiting for somebody else. So here we go. I think the concepts are valid. The problem with the overall concept is we quite often think this is a static look that's going to last for a period of time. And so we do a business plan, and the business plan is good in 1997. Oh, guess what? It's 2025. It's probably not quite so good. What has changed? And I give you an example, I think, of Amazon. And you're right, Amazon, we spend multiple thousands of dollars each month on supplies that would have been bought from a variety of 5 or 6 stores in the past, and now they're more efficient about getting there. However, they've lost my vote on anything that is niche or technical. I quite often buy a variety of power supplies or electronics goods for a technical electronic support. If you go on Amazon and look for them, they'll have 15 models made with unusual names, and you'll have some American models as well. But if you go onto Walmart, they have made a point of getting to be technically astute. And now I can look for and search more variables and more specifics that fit my need. And in actual fact, I end up with a better fit or better product through that. Because what they've done, coming in underneath Amazon's power, is they've decided they've got to offer something better than what Amazon does. And I believe they do. They actually offer a better search. In Amazon, the search that we get is the best bang for the buck, the lowest price, and it disregards the manufacturer or the quality necessarily that would go with a known source. So you end up getting a good product, but it's really based on price and who the consumer likes. I want to
Yeah,
buy
that's an important differentiator. That's
right,
sort
and
of
so I think there's a
yeah,
difference going on, and we need to
yeah,
reevaluate
yeah,
every quarter. Which road
yeah.
are we going down? And I personally think Amazon has lost the formula for products that would funnel in for me. I want them to know my application, and I want them to not feed me a bunch of spurious feeds that come from the lowest cost of people who are paying them to ship their product.
Yeah.
So
Of course, I don't think I don't really know about Walmart, but I do know that Amazon allows, pay for placement. So you can, just like advertising, you can pay to have your product on top. Now they do say something about that normally.
we just go do a technical search, find something that you
Yeah.
want, that you're knowledgeable about, that's very
Yeah.
specific, that has about five more variables
Right.
than, and go search on both sites, and I think you'll be amazed.
Yeah. And also you can't tell what country of origin it is. Amazon refuses to put that on there. They just won't do it. So that is an interesting difference. In that particular case, we both have an image of the brand and what they do, and I think you just delineated sort of the development of a trend. I'm going to suggest, and that is that you may find that in certain areas, particularly electronics, where you can't really look inside and know anything about it, that in fact they're going to do a better job curating. Why? Because they've spent decades buying goods that they own, and then they have to handle the returns in some fashion, perhaps with the vendor, but for the most part, they have to handle it. And so if they get better products with fewer returns, they make more money. It's in their interest to buy better stuff. I'm not sure it is. Amazon will open up to anybody, and you have to have a real bad customer score to get kicked off of Amazon. Is my notion. I don't know that that still happens, but they
I
used
still
to.
think they're a wonderful purveyor of
Oh,
products,
yeah, I do
but
too.
they're not biased to the consumer. I want a purveyor of products that is
Right.
able to be biased to what the needs that I need have.
Yeah.
I'm a little self-serving there, you know.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the way the economy works is by making sure you buy the stuff that means something to you and your company. That's why capitalism is so wonderful. You
One
can't do
last piece on
that.
this one is it's
All
very
right.
applicable in aftermarket automobile parts.
Yes.
I got a friend who does a lot of work with smaller, VWs that are from an older age or Corvettes that are older. And if you go on looking for aftermarket parts, you can find products for quarter the price
Yeah.
that come in and they are made out of tin rather than cast. They
Yeah.
look
Ridiculous.
identical and they bolt on identically, but one will be, 2 or 3 pounds, the other one will be 15 pounds.
Yeah. And you're
Um,
looking at a picture, and so you can't really tell because it's been photoshopped or
and they
whatever.
do work and
They,
they do
yeah.
function, but there's a big difference in the quality and the longevity of the
Yeah.
product.
Part of their rating problem that I'm finding is that the ratings almost always happen within 10 days of receiving the product. And if somebody opens the box and they're delighted with that experience and maybe they have to build it and then there it is and it works okay, they're going to give it a high rating. But if it falls apart in 3 months, how many of us think to go back and rate it as not being reliable, not being having a long-term value? You see, things fall apart. I bought a bunch of patio furniture covers. They're beautiful. They look great. They worked great. Now we're only a year and a half in, and about 6 out of 8 are ripped. Why? I don't know.
They
But
were
to
great
me,
fabric.
that's not a quality that I expect. I expect 5, 6, 10 years of wear out of something like that. I don't expect it to rip. And so now should I go back in and rate it lower now? Maybe, but do we all have time for it? That's an inherent problem of the rating system, which misleads customers for the long-term durability. So,
Well, I think it comes back to the fact that brand recognition is very important. And I think we are seeing a reversal to buying a brand that has retained the quality, not just shopped for price.
yes.
Um, some brands you think are still good. It was a middle line brand was Black and Decker back in the day. It was
Yeah.
a middle line brand, but everybody was dependable. You could get parts for it. Well, we didn't realize, a lot of people didn't realize that it's now been bought off by a Chinese manufacturing
Mhm.
company, and it's
Mhm.
still manufactured as Black and Decker, but the quality is definitely not what it was
Right.
even when it was a midline brand, not a really great brand.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
you get some warpage that goes on,
And
morphing of
there's also no consistency across all of the battery powered items because they have like three different formats. I mean, I've got at least three different kinds of chargers for Black and Decker, and
yeah.
it's like, wait a minute, wasn't anybody thinking about this product line?
Well,
Well,
that's why we've got
no,
yeah.
apparently no, they weren't thinking about
In
it.
the contracting world, we've got DeWalt, we've got Makita, we've got Bosch, and I ended up buying a lot of Makita stuff back in the day, and so I'm a Makita house.
Yeah.
But I've got my family members who are contractors, they're DeWalt guys,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
but at
But they're
least they're
not they're not Black
consistent.
and Decker guys, are they?
But they're not Black and Decker
That's
guys,
right.
and they're not some off-brand from China either.
Right. Right.
So.
Ray, give us your impressions about using this for some of the things that you used to do. You're muted, by the way, but some of the things in terms of continuous improvement and things on the product line, how could you have used some of these tools to any value to try and organize people to get certain things improved?
Yeah, we've all shared a particular client that that manufactured containers, and I think one of the things that obviously this would apply to them is, how do you, when you think of this as a commodity, a container is a commodity, but
Mhm.
on the other hand, it does have value that if you can sell the customer on either the quality or the size or something, it means that it makes a huge amount of difference. Um, I remember this is kind of related to this, but I had a customer at one time, and they made 5-gallon containers, and for whatever reason, when they were adding colorant to the top, they discovered that the formulas weren't coming out the way they were supposed to, and nobody could figure out what the specific problem was until somebody realized that one mold was a quarter inch shorter than the other mold. And as a consequence, that quarter inch was the difference between giving the right color or an off color.
Oh, so yeah, and so there's an issue of, making a correction. In that case, they probably thought that was a mistake. But really, I mean, there are all kinds of mistakes like that all throughout all
Yeah.
organizations. And those are the ones you want to find. You want to find them and get those fixed. And a mold is expensive, but at least not mixing those molds would be a good idea, right?
Yes.
It's like buy more of at least one of them, and if you want to build a short one, I guess you could keep that and maybe you'd use it. Molds are very expensive, but still you can't have those kind of mistakes. So
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Ed, do you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. I'm going to take a little bit different perspective. If you're a small business, I think it's really important that you're in business. You've been in business for a long time. You have a business plan, and you're trying to follow through with that plan. But the real importance part of the whole process is to review it on some type of consistent basis, whether it's quarterly or annually, and look for opportunities in meeting the diamond more effectively. How can you improve your service? How can you improve your image? How can you improve your price and your quality and make your product or your service better for servicing your customers? And if you do that, you're going to have a longer runway of your business, and you're probably going to be able to take away customers from your competitors. If you just come into work every day and do the same old thing, dig the ditch the same old way, you're not going to really be able to take advantage of these possible improvements.
Mhm.
And that's where it comes into innovation. Innovation is something that you have to focus on and look for better ways of handling customers or distribution or manufacturing. There's a lot of things you can do to improve your business. Unfortunately, I find a lot of owners aren't willing to change. They like the way they do their business. And when you come in with some ideas for them to look at their business differently, they always give you the reasons why they can't do it. One of the things in particular that I really believe in is the price is so much dependent upon when you get paid. And I don't think a lot of people look at it that way. Because if you do a service and you charge a certain amount of money and you have to wait 2 years to get your money back, it's not a very profitable venture. So that's one thing that I like to focus on is the receivables and trying to find a more effective way of collecting earlier. Sounds easy, but unfortunately, it's not. It takes a lot of time and effort to refine your processes using some sort of innovation, looking at a better way of solving the problem.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Good point. Well, the overall thought about a business plan, I think, is interesting because I think a couple of you have mentioned that, and I've done business plans. I don't find that my clients really have ever used them very much, but they at least they use them to kind of point direction and maybe like, okay, let's at least point the arrow at that target, and a little bit more. But I think the way that this kind of really works is, and you got to break that cycle, Ed, of thinking, well, we like the way we're doing everything, because nothing will stay the same, especially today. I mean, who would have thought that companies like Rainbird were gonna have to be highly invested in electronics and the internet and cell phone applications 10 years ago? They're used to dealing with water. It's like we want to just do water stuff. That's who we are. And they and others have had fits and starts on trying to get into the electronic side of it. But you know what? They're getting better and they're starting to learn that and they're beginning to understand that. And you have a level of convenience that comes with that models customers a certain way. I mean, I switched 5 controllers from one company to another company simply because the first company never did understand that they had to answer the phone and solve technical problems about their digital stuff. It's like, I didn't need a call to tell you that, my 90-degree, 3/4 inch elbow broke. I know what to do in that. But I don't know what to do when I can't connect to your device. So you're going to have to help me. A lot of people haven't really don't think that kind of thing through. But to constantly be monitoring your customer in the sense of have we increased value or not? That would probably help fix your financials if you did a better job of that. Did we increase value? And the goal, really, if you really think about it, the goal is to increase the perceived value with your customer base and your new customers constantly. You have to delight them by surprising them with new stuff. And it has to work. And you have to fix your mistakes and you have to move on and you have to keep the customer in your side of the equation instead of your competitors. Even if you have got a business that isn't like anything else. A lot of times you say, well, nobody does this, so I can just keep on doing it. Well, if NVIDIA had that attitude, they'd still be making specialized cards for do-it-yourself computer gamers. That's how they started. They didn't start by building all of these really hyper advanced chips that can do everything that AI needs today. They started by knowing that they had to increase the performance on a constant basis. They had to, they had to, they had to. And the presidents have consistently pushed their people to say, okay, this is what we're going to build today. In 2 years or 1 year, we're going to build this different one. And I understand that I've heard a CEO say, I think it was of Intel at the time, it's like, well, we have We have this year's production, which we started 2 years ago. And we're working on, and we're just about done with our design for next year. But we're also started working on the design for 2 years from now. So they're working on three product lines or delivering one, working on two more at the same time. Small businesses need to think in this way. How are they going to improve their business every single day, every week, every month? So in a way, it's not just that I've laid out a format that you might get started with and use a little bit. But as you all have basically said, I mean, you have to pay attention to this. You have to do it. And Ed's right. A lot of small business people just don't think this way. If you're one of
Well,
those small business people watching today, thinking that you're doing everything right, we could probably all get together and guarantee you're not going to be around in 5 or 6 years because everything doesn't stay the same, obviously. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. Plumbing has changed significantly. House wiring has changed significantly. There are a lot of things, the innovations that come along, and you gotta keep up with that and do some of that innovation on your own. So, any
well,
final thoughts, gentlemen?
one of the ways that you can get grounded quickly is to bring in trusted advisors that can give you different perspectives on how you can improve your business. And I think a lot of times business owners are so focused on their daily routines of doing their jobs that they don't look outside of the company for potential solutions that could make their company more effective.
Mhm.
So I don't know why there's a reluctance to do that, but it perhaps is they don't have the time to bring people in. There's plenty of very smart people out there with a lot of experience that would love the opportunity to come in and give you some insights on your business to make it more productive and do a better job of serving your customers.
Right. And it's
Well, if I can, I was going to make a note on that. I don't know how many times I've heard the mantra, well, you don't know anything about my business. And as though that's the only end all and be all of improvement, and I think part of what you've been trying to say here, Ron, is that, and Ed, when you get outside input, you get different perspectives on what may or may not make a business work. And as we all know, the death rate among small businesses is about 80% in a matter of 5 years. So, you know, having outside input it would probably change that.
absolutely.
Yeah, I
John,
have the people I've dealt with in the past, very few CEOs or business owners have that ability to see the potential of outside perspectives on improving their business.
mm,
One in particular that Ray and I have worked with has made it an ongoing challenge to bring in other perspectives to his company. And at times, it's not a very comfortable process with
Hmm.
the local management team, but it gets people to think outside the box, looking for better ways of solving problems. And it ain't going to come internally because there's just too focused day to day on satisfying requests. They need some outside advice.
right.
And if they're smart about it, they take a really deeper look into these opportunities. They can really find some significant ways of improving their company.
Absolutely. John.
I can't help but agree with you, Ed, on that. And I think it's the unknown unknown. We as business operators spend much of our time growing the business, but once it's grown, we then we stay in our zone, thinking that we do have an edge on the market with what we've got. To some extent, we discount looking at controversial or otherwise, flamboyant ideas. However, that's what will catch us. It's the unknown unknowns, and there are people out there who already know some things that are going to affect our business. And if
Mhm.
we stay in the dark about them, we will not be in a position to protect ourselves from them.
Mhm.
And so I think ignorance in this case is the one thing that we need to avoid. And the only way to avoid ignorance is exposing yourself a little bit to some ideas that may be uncomfortable. Um, may know what to do. Classic example was a company that I spent time with that was very paper oriented, very uh, good handle on that, but they did not want to move into the digital world. And as a result of them not moving to the digital world, their errors and losses grew, and their ability to contract and speed through contracts was limited. They ended up going out of business, not
Hmm.
because they didn't do that, but because their management wasn't open to change.
Hmm.
And you know, the tip of the iceberg that we saw was their resistance to digitivity, but the reality was it was the management not wanting to change anything.
Yeah.
So
And so nothing changed, and the
so nothing
customers
changed.
realized that there wasn't any reason to go back.
Right.
Right. When I started in management, I always thought it was a good idea to get the team together and come up with a consensus of some plan of operating. And after I switched companies and looked at it differently, I said to myself, I have to I have to change this approach because all I'm hearing is just mediocre ideas because that's all they knew. So you have to challenge them. You have to say, well, I don't agree with that. We need to do this. Look at this. Someone researched this as a potential opportunity. You have to challenge people rather than just sitting back and listening to what their viewpoints are.
Hmm.
If you mix the two together, you come up with something pretty dynamic.
And
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable. You mentioned it. It is uncomfortable, and I
Yes, it
think you're
is.
absolutely right. It's uncomfortable to start to look at the fact that you could be doing things wrong in 5 years, maybe even a little off track today. What is it that we can do to correct that trend? And maybe you don't need to, but at least validate that.
Oh, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, back in the 80s or 90s, and probably the 90s, there used to be somebody who kind of was jumping on this study that was done. And Ray, you may remember this. It was something like um, you have to develop new products because today your number one product will be your number seven product in 3 years. In other words, a certain percentage of your business, 20, 30%, a large percentage of your business came from products that you didn't have 2 years ago.
Hmm.
Now that may not be true with a company that makes containers, but it still happens and changes as it evolves because styles change and innovations change. Something that does change slower than that in some industries, but this was a particular time of a lot of change. That was a pretty amazing dynamic. Today, we're going into a dynamic just as volatile and interesting and wild as I think we did then. It happens to be more digital and AI. But if you think that you're going to be doing the same thing 5 years from now, you're probably woefully wrong about, the mix of your products, the way that your service is handled, and the expectations of customers quite different than it used to be. So,
Yeah.
there's this evolving thing. And you know what? The customers will your customers will evolve whether you like it or not. You can't really keep them in your little moat forever when people are tempting them every day with things that are better, newer, shinier, more efficient, and cheaper. And how are you going to compete with somebody who does that, year after year after year? It's going to be tough. So, well, gentlemen, our time is coming to an end. Thank you very much for a stimulating conversation. And for
Yeah.
those of you out there, look in the notes below to get a little bit more information on how you can access some of the topics that we discussed today. Thank you so much. See you in a couple weeks.